Hello and welcome to this video podcast with Core on leveraging IoT solutions for sustainable smart cities. I'm Andrew Parkin-White. I'm the managing partner of the market advisory firm TecFutures, who specializes in IoT revenue growth. I'm delighted to be joined today by Laurence Potter, so I'll let Laurence introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laurence Potter. I also go by Laurie. I'm Senior Solutions Architect for EMEA and APAC at Core Wireless.
Thank you, Lawrence. So I just wanted to set the scene and the structure of our discussion today on why sustainable smart cities are so important. And what we'll cover today is how smart city solutions are spreading, how those innovative technologies are coming to the fore, and how organizations have so many options to implement ever smarter smart city solutions. So we've done some work in this area, and we see that successful implementation requires a key understanding of the business case, choosing the right partners, addressing the organization's key pain points in the adoption journey, and helping them along the way. And we also know that Core has enabled many cutting edge, sustainable, and impactful IoT use cases that underpin these requirements. So we're going to be looking at the transformative potential of IoT in urban infrastructure, the main economic, environmental, and societal benefits of smart city initiatives, and how these improve sustainability in smart cities. And most importantly, we're going to look at the challenges and implementation strategies that organizations need to have to take advantage of this rapidly growing area. So moving to you, Laurence, my first question really is what are we meaning by sustainable smart cities, and what's driving IoT adoption in smart cities?
Certainly. So, smart cities is a concept around connecting devices and connecting metering agents around different parts of the city. And this can, on a whole sort of macro level, bring a greater sense of control, understanding, and observability over a city. The idea that the sustainable element on that is primarily focusing on, ecological and economical benefits from it. And as such, there is quite a big focus from the IoT industry to try and capitalize and provide solutions in this area, as the environment is a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, why is sustainability such a theme in smart cities? We hear a lot about it, but there is a particular angle here with smart cities and sustainability. Could you summarize that in a few words, please?
Certainly. So, in terms of sustainability and why that's so big at the moment, certainly smart cities is um, everything comes down to energy consumption, whether that's electrical energy, water being pumped to your house or to a business, or people spending time doing tasks that could be done by automated checks through sensors and whatnot. These all have an economical and sort of societal impact on them. So by the fact that people are having to go out and do those jobs, or we're wasting water through a leak, or electricity is being used at times that it shouldn't be used, and we're not efficiently using the grid. These will all have a financial impact on customers, on companies, and will make certain aspects of projects or products more expensive. As a result, it's in everyone's interest, and certainly in certain products or project ideas scope, to try and reduce the amount of wastage that we are producing. And cities and local governments are starting to cotton on to the fact that actually reducing this, but making sure that we're keeping an eye on how we're reducing this and by how much we're reducing this, is a really sort of key part to making sure that projects, the promises at the start are maintained and kept throughout the operational lifespan of that project. So a few more than a few words for you there, but hopefully that was a sort of sustainable answer.
Yeah, I was that's a very sustainable answer. I was just going to sort of carry on from that. I mean, in the past, there was a lot about selling technology for technology's sake, and a lot of IoT companies came into the fore and saying it does this, it does this, it does this, and look at the wonderful technology. And from what we've seen, the actual customers and end users of IoT are less interested about the technology. It's more around the benefits that they're bringing. Is that something that you're seeing very strongly in core at present?
I mean, I've seen that throughout my career in IoT so far. This is more than just talking about a fancy new product coming to the market and the promises it may be able to deliver on. It's more about turning that argument into what does the end user, what does the customer want, what does in this case a government, a local government want for their city. It's obviously to reduce the bills, reduce any sort of sense of having liability in a certain area if they're not meeting statistics that they need to meet to get extra funding from their government. There's a whole sort of wider range of knock-on impacts if certain projects aren't met. And so the narrative isn't so much, okay, there's a new product that's come to market. Let's have a look at how this might sort of like fit in and how we can design something around this product. It's more, we have a problem. We need to, reduce wastage in, XYZ utility. How can we best do that? And as a solutions architect, it's my fun job to go out and have a look at what products there are to solve that. And I think there is there's a far more sort of conscious side of buyers at the moment where they're consciously going, okay, this is the problem I'm trying to solve for. Could this particular project or product solve this problem for me and actually get that end result? So this, in my mind, is the maturity of the IoT industry. We are at that point now where we have realized gains from putting out IoT devices in the field, and smart cities is a really key example of this. So I think that narrative has certainly changed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it certainly ties in with the research that we've been doing, and that organizations and enterprises don't buy on technology alone. They buy on business benefits, they buy on efficiency, they buy on improving their processes. And if a solution can match those sort of things, it's a much easier sell into the organization than technology alone. I'd like to kind of move on. So when we look at smart cities, it's not one thing. It's so many different use cases, and quite a few of those represent sustainable use cases. So I'd like to take this opportunity, Laurence, to just ask you what sort of use cases are you seeing at Core, and what sort of benefits are they giving to customers, to end users, organizations, citizens? In kind of measurable terms?
Certainly. So there's the pretty easy to attain ones. So just typical, water metering, making sure that water is being used when it should be used, and if there's any sort of residual usage at the times of day that don't make sense, then perhaps there's a leak. There's obviously electricity usage as well, or sort of bundles in the same sort of sphere. But then you get more sort of things that you see. So waste management, for example, is one of those sort of use cases where trucks are no longer rocking up to empty bins to look at them and then go, these don't need emptying. Instead, these are IoT connected bins, which literally are checking how much the bin is full, and then when it's getting to a point where it's pretty close to full, it'll speak to the database and the server for the company coming to pick up the waste and say, this should be added to the route. And then it'll do that intelligent route optimization to make sure that the bins that are needing to be collected are collected, and they're collected in an efficient format. I'm also seeing quite a lot at the moment if smart surveillance as well. And this comes in a couple of different guises. So initially, what I was seeing was remote construction sites that didn't yet have internet infrastructure. They were using, for instance, cellular technology to get that connectivity back to a surveillance room where a team can monitor multiple different construction sites. And so they were doing this sort of dormant building surveillance. But now this is gone on a lot more. So I'm starting to see this in projects which are using it for seeing if large infrastructure are sort of shifting. So think about bridges. If they're shifting beyond a certain amount, then they're probably more prone to failure. And it alerts the local government of that. But I'm also seeing body cams as another example where we're now
Yeah.
going to the point of police or security agents are out there. They're recording their interactions with problematic scenarios, and they're recording them. And it's not just about getting that data off when the camera's back at, and you've got an IT person looking at it and going, okay, let's take the SD card out and read it. It's now being transmitted as a live stream so that other security agents can be informed at the same time. So this is, I think, an example of IoT sort of rapidly developing a individual market and really sort of changing from that original use case of just utility metering all the way up to now sort of live streaming and providing that additional guidance and that additional value to customers that they weren't originally looking for, but now is a very obvious benefit.
Yeah. And no, IoT, just as there's not one use case for smart cities, so an IoT solution will be spanning multiple technologies, and sometimes this can be a bit overwhelming for a potential adopter of IoT. And there's also sort of the elusive area of all this data that it generates. What do we do with it? I wondered if you have any thoughts on that.
So in terms of all the data that is generated from these applications, that's a great question. That's part of how a product is really implemented in, and what use case it benefits to the customer there. So you could have, for example, we could talk about the body cam example because that's quite a relevant one. We all see, when we're videoing on our phones, we can all see that our data storage getting used up. There's no point, for example, for all of that data to be consumed and transmitted over the air if it's not going to have any sort of real value. If the security agent isn't needing that, then it shouldn't be recorded. It shouldn't be sent. We shouldn't be sort of wasting that sort of transmission capability. But then I think the flip of that is the more data that you can capture, the better. So making sure that you're capturing before the event, during the event, after the event, all those different metadata points that you can pick up are very helpful. In other applications where you are looking at water metering, I gave this example earlier, where you might have sporadic usage during the day. It's exactly sort of what you're expecting, where you have a high amount of usage whilst people are awake. But then once the office shuts down, if you're still consuming, and you're still using some of that water, when there's no appliances in the building that are using it, then you've clearly got the some sort of leak, or this water is going somewhere because you're consuming it. The meter's telling you you're consuming it. And so from there, that metadata, that additional data that you are using, that you're transmitting to the back end, just provide like quite a useful balance and benefit to the consumer, because suddenly they're identifying, not just how much I'm using, but this area I shouldn't be using any, and I am, and this is suddenly very useful data. I know that certain IoT projects also will normally develop a first set of products that use verbose logging to capture great amounts of detail about what the device is doing out in the field, just to sort of derive differences between different environments, and this helps that ability to tweak firmware on devices a little bit more. So what I'm trying to say is there's benefits and there are cons to using a lot of data. Typically, they'll land in like a data warehouse, so they'll go to AWS, for example. There's many other cloud providers, and they'll sit there, and they could either be sort of consumed to learn more about the device or the environment, or even provide greater benefits to the customer.
So, Laurence, how would you say Core overcomes the challenges that organizations are facing with implementing sustainable smart city solutions or IoT solutions generally?
I would say Core is very well positioned for consulting with a customer on what they're looking to do in the IoT space, what level of implementation they're looking to have. and what their project might look like. But it all comes down to sort of the basis of what are they actually trying to achieve. We spoke earlier about the sustainability element is all about sort of trying to remove wastage, stop energy draw. Maybe that's humans or electricity or water, whatever it may be. It's just trying to reduce the wastage that we have. But the question that I quite commonly ask customers is like, what are you actually trying to achieve here? You may think that you want to go for a certain device or a certain modem or a certain carrier, but perhaps there's a different way of looking at this. And quite often, when I'm speaking with customers, that is the sort of route we go down. And it all starts with, what's their strategy? From that strategy, we can then sort of derive a business plan. That's where the consultation comes in. What device is going to serve the purpose you need it to? How do we then connect that device? Where is that pumping the data into? How are you then consuming that data? And then from that, it's quite easy to draw a statement of work and have an understanding. And the IoT industry is pretty famed for having a lot of three-letter acronyms. I've got another one for you. It's DNA. It's Device Network Application. And it's how those all interact. That's essentially any component of an IoT project will have a device that uses a network of some sort to then connect to an application. That is the basic premise of an IoT deployment. And core services sort of wrap around there. So from the device front, we've got a lot of expertise in-house on how to best sort of program a device, make sure that you're getting the most out of modems and modules, and we've got a lot of experience in different sensor technologies as well. But then when you deploy that device in a certain country or territory or region, you're going to need some sort of device certification with that as well. And that device certification is normally, as with any other certification exercise, quite a problematic, long, confusing journey. But we've got a device certification team here at Core, which very handily helps smooth out the process here. And then on the whole network side, we have a platform that unifies many different types of connectivity. And so no matter what you're dealing with, whether it's LoRaWAN, cellular, satellite, we aggregate these. We make sure that we're simplifying the process for you to apply this to your device. And finally, making sure that that is all being pumped into your application at the end, whether that's on-premise or in a cloud server. We have applications that support that, and we have experts in-house that are experts in Azure, AWS, and how to set these up and how to manage these successfully for an IoT company. And hopefully, once all that's said and done, the customer can turn around and goes, yes, this is what success looks like. We have a good business plan based on the strategy that we need.
Yeah, that's a very thorough and robust answer. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot now and ask you what three pieces of advice, and this is kind of a very succinct question, the three pieces of advice you give to organizations who are looking to implement smart IoT solutions in cities. And you can draw that from your experience with working across multiple use cases with multiple clients.
So my first piece of advice would be to simplify, simplify, simplify. So this may be your design, your architecture, your requirements, but you need to simplify what you're trying to achieve. There's a stat that 70% of IoT projects fail before even hitting production, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. But a lot of the time it's because people are not trying to simplify their requirements and they're trying to overcomplicate the project. Costs grow, time to delivery grow. It becomes unwieldy. So it becomes a lot easier to have a success out of a project if from the starting point, the requirements and everything in between from the start to the end of the project is simplified. So I would suggest simplifying the project first and foremost. The second part would be to prioritize making sure that you have a device that is built and ready to be out in the field for double the amount of time that you're expecting it to be. quite often I've seen IoT projects when they're successful, they're in the field and they had a planned life of 18 months, 2 years. Suddenly they're very successful, and the company decides 12 months or maybe 15 months in to the project lifespan that they want to expand and extend that timeline so that the project is even more successful. You're getting even greater return on investment because it's providing such a useful value. But they have to then organize and sort of build in a whole new layer of IoT devices that will be replaced, and that's an operational burden, and that can sometimes kill the length of the project, because suddenly you have to reintroduce hardware cost and then the installation cost, etc. So my second one there would be definitely to consider having that device deployed for twice as long as you're expecting it to be. And then the third one would be to make sure that you have experts in the room with you. I speak with quite a lot of customers who haven't had much IoT experience, and there's a lot of considerations that I make almost naturally, having been in the IoT industry for a little while, that they haven't yet considered. And so I would always be consulting a third party or having an in-house expert that has done IoT projects before, gone through the whole lifespan from design through to deployment and then operational and then the returns, because these four elements of a IoT project are pretty fundamental to making sure that it's a success for the customer in terms of the impact. And IoT projects always have a way of throwing some sort of spanner up, and it may not even be a particular IoT project's fault. It might be outside external influences, political, geographical, for example. The last few years have given us plenty of examples where those two cases have had a giant impact on IoT deployments. So certainly having someone, an in-house expert or a third party that you can count on for advice and consultation is a great one.
So thank you for joining us today. We've covered a lot more ground on this topic, even though we've had a broad discussion already. But there is a way to learn more, and that is to check out the ebook that Core has developed together with TecFutures, and you'll find a link to this ebook at the bottom of the screen. So thanks for joining us today, and thank you to Laurence of Core for a very interesting discussion, and we look forward to joining you again in the not too distant future.